Greetings all. Thank you for gathering tonight for the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee meeting. My name is Mignon Moore from the District of Columbia, and along with Jim Roosevelt from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I chair the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee. As we begin, please unmute and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll turn it over to Jim for roll call.
Thank you, Mignon. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and especially with my good friend Mignon Moore. I'd like to recognize our parliamentarian, who we always count on, Helen McFadden, to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Applebaum. Ms. Blanco.
Present.
It's my understanding that if Ms. Blanco needs to leave, she has given her proxy to Dennis Spate. Ms. Brazil?
Present.
Mr. Brennan?
Present.
Ms. Cardona?
Presente.
Mr. Curry?
Present.
Ms. Daughtry?
Present.
Ms. Desai Martin?
Here.
Ms. Dowdell?
Present.
Mr. Elete?
Here.
Ms. Fowler?
Here.
Mr. Aridia has given his proxy to Mr. Ray. Mr. Jones? Ms. Kmark?
Here.
Mr. Leon?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Ms. McGarrick has given her proxy to Mr. McGlinchey. Mr. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Martinez has given her proxy to, is Ms. Martinez here? Okay. She's given her proxy to Ms. Cardona.
Hi, this is Rocco Class. Leave a message at the tone and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McDonald?
Here.
Mr. McClinchy?
Here.
Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Ray?
Here.
Ms. Ronan? I have seen her in the list. Okay. Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Mr. Spate?
Here.
Ms. Schwecker?
Present.
Mr. Thompson?
Present.
Ms. Weingarten?
Here.
Ms. Williams? Okay. You certainly have a quorum, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell is here. I'm sorry, I couldn't get on my phone fast enough. I apologize.
Okay. You
Yes.
certainly have a quorum.
Thank you, Helen. Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized who was not? All right. Yes, thank you. We do indeed have a quorum because per our charter and bylaws, the quorum is constituted by 40% or 14 RBC members present in person or by proxy. Before we move into the business of the meeting, I'll remind members to please remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. Please use the raised hand feature that was described at the outset by the production staff, or send a message to Veronica through the chat function if you would like to speak. Veronica will create a speaker queue when you raise your hand for the co-chairs to utilize. When it is your turn to speak, the co-chairs will recognize you and you may unmute yourself. If you have any questions or comments before we get started, please submit them in the chat to Veronica or raise your hand in Zoom. Staff will help make sure you are recognized. Veronica, do you see any hands raised or have you received any messages in the chat?
I have not, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Ronan shows as being present in the chat and was not able to say she was present.
All right, would you record that, please? Seeing no questions, I will turn it back to Mignon.
Thank you, Jim. While this meeting is necessary to address the last two delegate selection plans in conditional compliance, we will also use this time to discuss an issue regarding the general election ballot in Ohio with you. As you are all aware from your experience with presidential campaigns, it is not uncommon for the Democratic and Republican parties to hold their nominating conventions in late August or early September. In fact, 6 of the last 8 major party nominating conventions took place after August 22nd, the day that our convention is scheduled to end this year. In Ohio, the law requires major parties to certify the names of their presidential candidates nominated by a national convention to the Secretary of State at least 90 days before the election. This year, that date, as many know, was August 7th. Ordinarily, when a state's certification deadline conflicts with a major party convention date, the state takes routine measures to correct the issue and to ensure that both major parties are able to access the state's general election ballot. Ohio's law was enacted in 2010. Since then, the legislature has passed temporary legislation twice to accommodate the parties' convention dates. In the 2 other states with similar deadlines this year, Washington State agreed to accept a provisional certification before its deadline, as it had in past cycles, and the Alabama legislature passed a bill to move its certification deadline to a later date. The Ohio Secretary of State rejected our party's offer of a provisional certification, which many states have accepted for years, and offered 2 options: that the Democratic National Committee must move up its nominating convention, or the Ohio General Assembly must act by May 9th to create an exception to this statutory requirement. Since that time, we have explored a variety of options to resolve this issue, including legislation, litigation, and changes to our nominating process to accommodate Ohio's exceptionally early deadline. Litigation was not pursued because while our lawyers were confident that our constitutional claims were strong and that we would ultimately prevail in court, they were cognizant that litigation can often be a lengthy process and time was of essence. We have also been working with leaders in Ohio, top election lawyers, and other stakeholders to push the simple legislation that would resolve this issue, as was done last cycle and 2 cycles before that. However, it quickly became clear that the success in Ohio's GOP-dominated legislature was also uncertain. As such, we explored whether it would be possible for the party to take matters into its own hand and adjust the date of our convention nominates and to adjust the convention nominates President Biden and President Harris, while maintaining our party's plan for an incredible in-person convention in Chicago. After months of dragging their feet, Governor Mike DeWine called a special session of the legislature to address the date issue. But even then, Ohio Republicans were still playing partisan games, attempting to tie the bill on the nominating deadline to a poison pill legislation to undermine ballot measures in the state. After fits and starts, and after we had already announced that we would move forward with this final option, they finally passed a bill to move the certification deadline to September 1st, 2024. The governor signed the bill on Sunday, June 2nd. Ohio's law becomes effective 90 days after they have filed with the Secretary of State. It is our understanding that the bill was filed with the Secretary of State on Sunday so that it can go into effect on August 31st, 2024, just one day before the new September 1 certification deadline. But at this time, we have not received confirmation from the Secretary of State that the bill was filed or that, in his view, the deadline issue has been resolved. We expect resolution of this issue to be straightforward, as it always has been, but Ohio Republicans had months to follow routine precedent and to fix the issue, as Washington and Alabama quickly did this year. Instead, they played partisan games, risking voting rights of millions of Ohioans in the process. With that in mind, we must note that the Ohio legislature, which has proven itself to be untrustworthy stewards of voting rights, will be back in session in mid-June. And importantly, the legislation just passed this week doesn't go into effect until August 31st at the earliest, which would leave the path of uncertainty, and we would leave our democracy in the hands of actors who have proven time and time again to act in bad faith on the issue that they should be straightforward on. We cannot leave our democracy or our rights or the rights of Ohio voters in their hands. To that end, Jim and I are proposing a resolution amending our call to the convention to allow the Convention Credentials and Rules Committee to adopt their own reports and confirm that the Democratic National Convention Committee, an affiliate of the DNC tasked with planning and managing the convention, has the authority to adjust the convention's date and voting mechanics as needed. Just as in 2020, these simple changes to our call will allow our party to proceed with a virtual roll call vote for Ohio's August 7th deadline. That resolution will be shared on the screen, and I also believe that you have received it in your email boxes. Now, I'd like to turn it back over to Jim for his thoughts regarding the resolution before we ask for a motion. Jim?
Thank you, Mignon. As Mignon just explained, this resolution will allow the convention's credentials and rules committees to adopt their own reports and will allow the DNCC to adjust the technical aspects of the convention as necessary. The Rules Committee adopting its own report means that we will have our permanent rules of procedure, which will govern the rules for voting before the August 7th deadline. And the Credentials Committee adopting its own report means we will know which delegates are entitled to vote before that date as well. Normally, these matters are resolved as the first order of business at the convention, so that's why this change is necessary. After we approve this resolution, it will be referred to the full DNC for approval by an email vote. Once the DNC has approved these amendments to the call, the Credentials and Rules Committees themselves will need to meet and develop their reports. We should think of our actions today as an insurance policy. This is the best way to ensure that bad faith MAGA extremist lawmakers in Ohio or in any other state cannot subvert the will of the voters when so much is on the line in this election. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution to begin discussion?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
I'd like to call on Yvette Lewis.
thank you. I'd like to move to adopt the resolution as presented to recognize the authority of the DNCC to plan, arrange, manage, and conduct the convention, and to allow the convention rules and credentials committees to adopt their own reports.
And is there anyone who would like to offer a second I will recognize
Second.
Jason
Second.
Bradley.
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
The resolution has been offered and seconded, and I thank all those who joined in those motions and seconding. The floor is now open for discussion by members. Please raise your hand or notify Veronica in the chat if you would like to speak.
Chair Elaine Kmark.
I will recognize Elaine Kmark. Elaine, you are muted now.
Yep, I got it. This is unfortunate that we have to do this, but given the shenanigans that go on now quite regularly on the other side, that's life. I think this is a good answer to a sort of amorphous situation. The question I have is, if we do end up having to do this, which essentially is having a virtual vote, will we still be able to have a roll call vote at the convention? Because that has, nobody in the public is going to understand what we did here for these reasons. And it seems to me that we wouldn't want to skip the drama of a roll call vote, particularly if the DNC is planning anything cool like they did 4 years ago. So can we...
I know the answer to that question from a legal point of view, but I would like to defer to the chair of the DNCC for the full answer. Mignon?
Well, I think we will see that we will be doing many different things at the convention. But I think one thing that we don't want to do is get ahead of the DNC voting on this resolution. And I think we're prepared to take into account that roll call vote is incredibly important to our members. But right now, I think we have to go that next step and make sure that this resolution is passed before I start planning out the convention one way or the other. But your point is well taken.
And thank you, Mignon. And I certainly agree from a legal and parliamentary point of view. I also think there is nothing from a legal or parliamentary point of view that prevents that happening at the convention.
That's correct.
Good.
Next, I'll call on Carol Fowler.
Thank you. And you sort of answered my question, but I just really want to emphasize that the people who, and I certainly understand why we have to do this, and I won't say what I think of those people in Ohio who are causing this difficulty, but I really want to encourage you to do as much as possible at the convention. The roll call, whatever else there is. I mean, the people who are, as we go through this process, being elected delegates right now are our hardest working, most faithful activists. They are President Biden's most loyal supporters, and they're spending their time and their money and to get elected delegate. They're excited about it. We've completed our process, and I see how eager everybody is to get to Chicago and do this. Some of them were elected delegates last time, and they couldn't go because of COVID. So whatever, and I guess this falls in your lap, Mignon, but whatever you can do to give the actual delegates in the actual convention hall the most opportunity there is to participate and to do things that mean something, not just sit there and listen to speeches. Give them some opportunities to vote, for goodness sake. So if you can put part of the rules report into the convention, if you can, and of course, I guess we'll have the platform report, but whatever you can do in person surely does matter.
Carol, I will say this just on behalf of all the teams at the DNCC. We have worked diligently with that in mind, making sure that the delegates have a great experience. And I like to say all the time, people take their vacations, they bring their families, this means a lot to them. And so I am very, very sensitive to what you're saying. And I assure you that we will be taking all that into account as we continue to plan out. But as everybody knows, Ohio, threw a monkey wrench in this. So we're just trying to make sure that the president is represented in all 50 states first. But we are taking into account those hardworking delegates because we know they have to leave there and go really do the hard work.
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Carol Ann Mignon. David McDonald.
Thank you, Jim. Just to be clear, I think more for people who may be watching this and not as close to it as we are, this is a one-time resolution for the 2024. There's nothing about this resolution that necessarily implicates any future conventions. Obviously, future committees are free to do whatever they want, but we're not making any suggestions for the future, just for this particular situation because of this particular set of outrageous conduct by a particular set of state officials. Is that correct?
Absolutely right. And thank you for that clarification, David. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will now call for a vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the motion, please unmute and say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, please unmute and say nay. I do not hear any nays, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, members. We will keep you apprised of next steps, which will include an email vote of the DNC membership to amend the call and to allow for the credentials and rules committees to adopt their committee reports. I'll hand it back to Mignon to take us through the first of our remaining delegate selection plans.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the members on your vote. Thank you so much. As mentioned, we have two conditionally compliant plans to address. The first plan is that of the Minnesota DFL. As you will recall, the Minnesota plan was initially reviewed and found in conditional compliance at our meeting on June 16, 2023. The submission included language that determined that the state party chair would automatically serve as the delegation chair if ratified by the National Convention delegation. After discussion, it was decided that the language did not conform with the rules. The issue was discussed at subsequent meetings on July 28th and October 6th of 2023. In October, the party offered updated language would allow for other delegates to be nominated and an election to be held for the position of delegation chair, but appeared to indicate that the chair was the de facto delegation chair. Following discussion, Frank Leone motioned that the co-chairs and staff meet with the DFL to ensure the process taking place on June 2nd would allow for a democratic selection of the delegation chair. We are happy to share with you that at the Minnesota DFL convention on Sunday, Minnesota's National Convention delegation selected their delegation chair. Chair Martin called for nominations and made clear that any candidate was eligible, including the state chair. The delegation unanimously selected our friend and RBC member, Chair Martin, as their delegation chair. Therefore, in practice, Minnesota was in compliance and has been moved automatically to full compliance. I'd like to congratulate Ken, and I'll now ask Jim to take us through the final delegate selection plan for Alabama.
Thank you, Mignon. I'll add my congratulations for Ken and for the entire Minnesota delegation.
We see a hand for David.
Yes. Now, Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, I just want to be clear in my mind. We're not moving the plan as originally submitted into compliance. We're moving the plan as amended by conduct into compliance, correct? Yeah.
And as implemented, yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's correct. Thank you.
All right. Moving to the Alabama plan, which was previously found in conditional compliance and received a staff evaluation from the Office of Party Affairs. Alabama has since submitted an amended plan, which upon review includes new additions for the RBC to consider and reconsider. You have been provided the second staff evaluation in your member materials, and I will ask that Alicia now share it on the screen. Thank you. As we can see, there are several remaining errors as well as additions to the plan that are inconsistent with the delegate selection rules. In particular, a limitation to the candidate right of review, which grants presidential campaigns the right to approve of their representatives at the convention. The state's delegate selection process has been ongoing while the plan was in conditional compliance. The district level delegates were elected on Super Tuesday, on the primary ballot, and the period to challenge the process expired on March 20, 2024. We have included this list in the party's, we have included that list in the party's staff evaluation. The Alabama Democratic Party will be meeting on Saturday, June 8, to elect the state's PLEO and at-large delegates, as well as standing committee members and the delegation chair. In accordance with the conditionally approved delegate selection plan, the Biden campaign has returned its approved one-to-one candidate list for all positions, and we expect to receive those candidates as certified within 3 days of their selection. We will keep you apprised of any further actions regarding this delegate selection plan, which remains in conditional compliance until the execution of the staff evaluation. Do any members have any questions? If so, please raise your hand now.
Seeing none, Chair.
Yep. Okay. Seeing none, because I don't see it either. I will turn it over to Mignon.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, members, this actually concludes our agenda for today. Thank you all for always showing up. We realize that this has been a robust committee all year, so we thank you so much. Hello?
Madam Chairwoman, before you close us out, I just really feel something that I need to say. This has been such a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this committee, serving with all of you. It's such a wonderful group. I love rules and bylaws. Mr. Chairman, you have been always so masterful in how you handle everything and with this group. And I want to say thank you. I hope I can speak on behalf of the group in thanking you and Chair Moore. You came in the middle of the movie, as I like to say, and you have more than steered the ship. So I wanted to say thank you, and I think everybody will join me in expressing a heartfelt thanks to both of you, and then a thanks to each of us, because we've had some difficult challenges this year, and I'm just very grateful, and I just kind of wanted to say that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Thank you, Yvette. Mignon, I see that Artie Blanco and I think maybe Lee Saunders have their hands raised.
Okay. Artie?
Thank you so much. I just was expressing my gratitude, of course, for your leadership as well, for both of you in this work. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Lee?
I'm just agreeing with everybody, with what everybody just said. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. So just as a reminder regarding future proceedings, as outlined in the call, any unresolved challenges related to the delegate selection process by June 24th will transition from the Oversight of Rules and Bylaws Committee to the Credentials Committee. Welcome. I think we have a couple of chairs on this call. While challenges will go to the Credentials Committee, the RBC will maintain jurisdiction over revisions to state delegate selection plans and ensuring compliance with the equal division requirements. Does anyone have any questions or announcements before we go? With no additional questions, I extend my gratitude once more, especially to our parliamentarian, Helen McFadden, and to the Party Affairs team, Veronica Martinez-Roman, who I must say is just incredible every step of the way. And I'd love to give her a personal shout out because she has been just invaluable to both Jim and I. To Aaron Bully, to Rick Boland, and Alicia Magny. Thank you all for staffing this committee with just excellence. Lastly, thank you to the DNC leadership, Sam Cornell, Mary Beth Cahill, Nick Bauer, along with the Secretary's Office, DNC Counsel, Andy Levine, and our court reporter, ASL and our ASL interpreter, and the team at Weymouth Watson for their efforts in facilitating this virtual gathering. If there are no objections, this meeting is now adjourned. Bye.